Hello, today I'm going to talk about Chapter 9 from the book Teaching Language to Young Learners by Lynn Cameron. The chapter is called Language Choice and Language Learning, and here we'll see the different uses of the first and foreign language in the classroom based on evidence and investigations. So here we have uses of foreign and first language in the classroom. And here we have a question. Target language only? We know that the more language we use, the more students will learn, and this applies to the foreign language because they don't receive input from that language outside the classroom. So we have to take advantage of that and teach as much as possible. Sometimes the teacher doesn't use the foreign language because she lacks confidence or because she doesn't want to be away from students because the use of the foreign language during the whole class can create a gap between the teacher and the student. Patterns of first language use in foreign language classrooms. And based on investigations, the movement between languages varies depending on the teacher. She will choose which language to use. Maybe she will use the first language for discipline, and she will use the foreign language to teach vocabulary. So there has been an investigation, and here we have functions of the use of the first language that were found in research classroom. So here is a list of all the times the teacher has used the first language and the functions. For explaining aspects of the foreign language, translating words or sentences when she is teaching vocabulary, for example, she will provide the first language equivalent, giving instructions, checking understanding, focusing pupils' attention, testing, giving feedback, disciplining and control, and informal talk with pupils. That's fun. When we ask them, how was your weekend? Tell me something about it. It's not wrong to use it with students in the first language. So here we have interpreting patterns of first language use. How can we explain the use of the first language by the teacher? Choice of language as compensatory or strategic. The teacher will use the language as compensatory when she lacks confidence, as I said before. If she doesn't feel confident enough, she won't use the foreign language during the whole classroom. And strategic is when she uses the first language for discipline, when students are not behaving in the correct way. Interpersonal factors in language choice. This is related to how students and teachers will be affected by the choice of language. So to explain more this, we have three different sub-factors. Alignment. This is related to the teacher being on the same level of students because if she uses the first language, they will feel aligned together. And if she uses the foreign language during the whole class, that may create a gap between the teacher and the students. Then we have emphasis, and this is to show importance of what is being said. For example, we have the discipline example again. If she uses the first language for discipline, is to show students that that is important, that they have to behave. And evaluation, this is related to the use of the foreign language and how the teacher uses it. Because if she uses only for content of a lesson, students will feel that the language is just a subject and not a means of communication. Here we have how teachers and pupils respond to each other. Dynamics of language choice and use. And here we'll see how the movement between languages in the classroom and how the teacher asks questions to the students and how they respond and the other way around. Here the teacher and the students are the ones who make the choice about which language to use. So here we have examples of that switching between languages in the classroom. The first one is dynamic 1, and it says helping pupils understand by translating. What the teacher does here is presenting a new topic, for example, in the foreign language, and providing the explanation of the first language. But we have a piece of advice here, because we should not do that all the time, because students will wait for the translation in the first language and they won't pay attention to the foreign language explanation. So what we can do is explaining a new topic in the foreign language and then asking a student to provide the explanation in the first language. In the example from the book, the teacher says, "Okay, now, group 1, say a word that you don't understand." She says this in the foreign language, and right after that, she says a word that you don't understand using the first language. So this is how she helps pupils understand by translating. The second dynamic says keeping to the same language. And here we talked about the teacher using the first language when she asks questions. The students will naturally answer in the first language as well. So we, as the person who have the control, we should be able to use the foreign language. So students will follow this pattern and they will repeat in the foreign language as well. The example from the book says, "What must we do to find the meaning of words?" The teacher asks this using the first language. And a student answers, "Find in the dictionary." And then she says again, "Find in the dictionary. You must use the dictionary." So she changes to the foreign language, so students will know that they will have to change language as well. That is keeping to the same language. And the third dynamic is giving meaning through a first language equivalent. And here we have the teacher asking, "What is community in the dictionary?" And then she asks again, "What is the meaning in the first language?" So the student said, "Community and community." He first said community in the foreign language because the teacher asked the question in the foreign language. And then he said community in the first language because the teacher asked the question in the first language. So that is giving meaning through a first language equivalent. She asked both questions consecutively, so students answer using both languages. And lastly, we have taking responsibilities, making choices. And here is a list of things that we should bear in mind as teachers in the future. The first idea says starting small. Little changes can make big differences in the future. If we use the foreign language in the classroom every day, little by little, by the end of the year, for example, students will be able to understand 19% of the things we said. Teacher-led choice. As we have said, the teacher has the power of choosing which language to use in the classroom. She has to be the one who provides activities for students to use the foreign language as much as possible. Then we have explaining new language. We have seen plenty of different ways for explaining new language this year. Images, flashcards, gestures, realia. We should use it. We should make vocabulary meaningful for students so they can learn it better. Try to avoid providing first language explanation or first language equivalent. Giving instructions. Sometimes giving instructions in a foreign language can be a little complex. So here we have a piece of advice. Try to explain using images, for example, and students will definitely understand. Checking understanding, we know that we don't have to ask them, "Do you understand?" because they will say yes when they don't. So try to ask a student, "Can you explain to me what you have to do?" Or if you use flashcards or images to give instructions, try to make them arrange them in the correct order or show you the correct image so you know that they understood what they have to do. Talk about learning. It's not wrong to use the first language to talk about learning with students. You can discuss about how to study, the importance of speaking in the foreign language in the classroom, and many other things. Then we have to talk about language. Students love making comparison between two languages and trying to find small comparisons or big differences. And if you're going to explain something in the first language, try to provide the explanation in the foreign language. Maybe the following class you can do the other way around. You can start the explanation in the foreign language and you can provide a little explanation in the first language. Feedback, and this is related to negative feedback because it is said that it is better to provide negative feedback in the first language to soften the negative aspect. But if you use the right words, the right expression, it's not wrong to use the foreign language to provide feedback because it will help students to acquire new vocabulary as well. Discipline. If the problem is noise, for example, you can say silence please, but if it is a big problem, you can use the first language with discipline because students will understand the gravity of the situation. And then for informal talk, as I have said before, to talk about the weekend or something not related to the classroom, for example, is good for the teacher because it creates a good atmosphere in the classroom and a good rapport with students. And the last one, making language choice conscious. I would like to use this one as a conclusion to tell you that I have learned a lot from this chapter. I took many useful ideas, and I would like to say that you don't have to be afraid of using the foreign language in the classroom. You can start little by little, as it says in the chapter. You can take many of the ideas from here, and I hope that you learn a lot from this chapter as I did. And lastly, I would like to share with you two examples from the book that I really liked. One of them is a teacher who presented a robot to her students, and she told them that the robot will only move if they speak in the foreign language. So students were really excited for the robot, so they spoke in the foreign language. And another example is a similar one, but it's a bear. The teacher presented a bear to students, and she said, "This is my friend. He will only speak if you use the foreign language." So students may ask questions and talk to the bear using the foreign language. So we know that students love that. We should try to implement this kind of things that we know that they really like. So I hope that you find this useful, and remember that to use the foreign language as much as possible, but it's not wrong to use the first language either if you use it correctly. Thank you. That was it. Bye.